Ever wondered what went down at Diddy's ultra-secretive white parties? These over-the-top events, where, oddly enough, even kids were invited, were more than just your average celebrity gatherings. And what about Jay-Z's private events, where he once stabbed someone but somehow walked away without facing charges? These are just a few of the wild stories hiding behind some of the rap game's most exclusive parties. These bashes weren't just about fun. They were where deals were made, alliances formed, and where things went down that you wouldn't believe. Before we dive into how these exclusive parties became the heart of so much chaos, let's break down some of the most secretive events thrown by rappers. Diddy's all-white parties, for instance, were the epitome of exclusivity from 1998 to 2009. These weren't your average celebrity hangouts. They were cultural events held in the Hamptons or Beverly Hills, dripping in luxury and filled with the biggest stars in entertainment. When you think of a party, you think of Puff, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Mariah, Paris Hilton. If your name had weight, you were there. But while the glitz and glamour were front and center, what happened behind the scenes told a different story. The parties had one unbreakable rule: no cameras, no media. Whatever went down behind those mansion doors stayed there. That secrecy wasn't just about protecting privacy. It created a mystique that made the parties even more desirable. Inside, A-listers mingled, networked, and let loose in ways they couldn't with the world watching. But the real drama unfolded during the after-parties, where things turned dark. Those who stayed past midnight weren't getting the polished version of Diddy's event anymore. Allegations suggest that these late-night gatherings crossed some serious lines, pushing boundaries and leaving some guests questioning what they had walked into. With the FBI currently investigating these parties, some wonder if the secrecy was less about keeping privacy and more about hiding things no one wanted to be exposed. White parties were a masterclass in control. Every detail was locked down, from the vibe in the room to the double-secured doors. But now, years later, those layers of secrecy have become suspect. Kids have like an hour left, so get extra comfortable, kids. Eventually, it all came to a point where everyone had to leave, and when they did, it was clear that things had taken a dark turn. The allegations tied to these parties paint a disturbing picture of manipulation, exploitation, and abuse, far from the glamorous, carefree image these events once presented to the world. Even before the rumors spread, neighbors began noticing things that didn't sit right. Women leaving these parties often seemed disoriented, stumbling out with their clothes in disarray, some wandering with their underwear exposed, an unsettling contrast to the polished, picture-perfect party narrative Diddy had built. This raised questions about what was happening behind those mansion doors. Then, there were the claims about the drinks. Witnesses and survivors have alleged that the alcohol wasn't the only thing being served. Drinks were reportedly laced with drugs like GHB, ecstasy, and cocaine, substances that strip away a person's ability to consent and leave them vulnerable. These weren't just party drugs. They created an atmosphere where manipulation and exploitation thrived. And according to some, it wasn't just a one-off. The parties allegedly stretched on for days, turning into what can only be described as a nightmare. Orgies involving high-profile guests and sex workers became common, with drugs fueling the chaos. But it wasn't only about sex. Accounts also included stories of physical violence and humiliation, turning these gatherings into something much darker. Perhaps the most disturbing part of these allegations is the role Diddy's inner circle is said to have played. It wasn't just friends and colleagues joining the party. They were reportedly part of a system designed to exploit women, trapping, mistreating, and even filming them. Even worse, some claim that footage of these moments wasn't kept private. It was allegedly sold, turning those horrific experiences into profit. It's a chilling picture of calculated cruelty that's hard to wrap your head around. These weren't parties anyone could just walk into. They were tightly controlled, secretive, and guarded. Phones were taken at the door, cutting off any chance of capturing what went down inside. Any chance of evidence escaping the venue. The no-phones policy wasn't just about protecting celebrity images. It seemed like it was there to hide the darker truths of what was happening. One story that stands out comes from Talia Graves, who filed a lawsuit in 2024. Graves said that back in 2001, Diddy and his bodyguard Joseph "Big Joe" Sherman lured her to a party. At Diddy's recording studio, The invite came under the pretense of discussing her boyfriend's performance at Bad Boy Records. But when she arrived, things allegedly took a terrifying turn. Graves claims she was drugged, and when she woke up, her hands were tied behind her back with what felt like plastic bags. She tried to fight back, but was slammed headfirst into a table. The next thing she remembers is waking up alone on a couch, bruised, in pain, and unable to piece together what had happened. What makes Graves' story even more unsettling is what she learned years later. Her boyfriend at the time told her that Diddy and Sherman had filmed the entire incident. According to her lawsuit, this wasn't just a private video passed around the inner circle. It was reportedly sold as pornographic material. Graves claims this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern where Diddy and his crew would record and profit off non-consensual acts. Her allegations mirror several others, detailing eerily similar stories. One woman shared that she was drugged at a party and woke up bruised, disoriented, and with no memory of what had happened. Another woman, Crystal McKenney, recalled being drugged at a 2003 event and coerced into sexual acts. McKenney also alleges that Diddy filmed the acts and shared the footage without her consent. April Lampros, another accuser, said Diddy recorded her back in 1997 and later showed the tape to others to humiliate and control her. These aren't one-off incidents. They paint a chilling picture of exploitation hidden behind the glitzy, exclusive facade. What enabled these acts was the strict control Diddy and his team maintained over these events. Phones were confiscated at the door, security was tight, and the atmosphere was designed to ensure no evidence could escape. Many victims felt powerless to speak up, fearing retaliation or public humiliation from the release of the footage. In her November 2023 lawsuit, Cassie Ventura shared her experiences at these secretive gatherings, claiming she was coerced into sexual acts during events where powerful people used the party atmosphere as a cover for abuse. In a September 2024 lawsuit, singer Dawn Richard described her mistreatment at these parties and revealed that she had witnessed others suffer the same fate. She said Diddy's control went beyond the music industry and turned these parties into spaces where people were trapped in situations they couldn't escape. A Florida model filed another lawsuit in September 2024, detailing her experience at one of Diddy's infamous parties. She said her drink was spiked, leaving her unconscious. When she woke up, she was bruised and disoriented, later discovering she was pregnant. She alleges that Diddy's girlfriend at the time, rapper Young Miami, pressured her to have an abortion. Attorney Tony Busby filed lawsuits for several unnamed victims, many of whom shared similar, horrifying experiences at Diddy's parties.
Were found in their system weird drugs that you probably never heard of. One in particular that continues to pop up is a drug called Xylazine, or Trank, which, based on our research, is known as a horse tranquilizer.
Among the 120 potential cases, some victims were minors at the time of the alleged incidents. These accounts share disturbing similarities: drugged drinks, coercion, and high-profile individuals abusing their power. What makes these allegations even more unsettling is the pattern described in the filings. The secrecy and exclusivity weren't just about maintaining a glamorous image. They were about making sure no evidence left the venue and that no victim could speak out without facing retaliation or threats. Both Diddy and Kanye West allegedly used their parties to flaunt power, but their worlds seemed to overlap as accusations of abuse tied their names together. Kanye West's gatherings, especially his Wyoming ranch parties, are infamous. Part art show, part elite social club, these events felt like a direct invitation into Kanye's world, full of control, mystery, and the kind of over-the-top extravagance he's known for. But behind that curated glamour, some disturbing stories have emerged. One of them is about his Ye album release party in May 2018, held at a remote ranch in Wyoming, surrounded by mountains and wild horses. Celebrities, industry insiders, and influencers were flown in, promised an intimate, artistic experience with bonfires, marshmallows, and Kanye's new music. It was all set up to feel magical, but for some, the secrecy went deeper than just protecting his art. Singer-songwriter Nikki Heaton shared her experience at one of Kanye's secretive gatherings during an Instagram Live in 2024. She was 19 at the time, freshly releasing her track, Bad Intentions, and saw the invite to Kanye's recording studio as a golden opportunity to connect with major industry names. But as soon as she arrived, the atmosphere shifted. Kanye and Diddy were both intoxicated, and things quickly took a dark turn. When Heaton was offered a drink, she sensed something wasn't right. Trusting her instincts, she pretended to sip, avoiding what she believed was a drugged beverage. That moment might have been her first line of defense in what would soon become a terrifying experience. As the night wore on, other women began leaving, and even Heaton's manager stepped out, leaving her alone with Diddy, Kanye, and a few of their associates. The mood went from uncomfortable to threatening. The men began pressuring her to take off her clothes, claiming the studio was too hot. At first, Heaton tried to resist, but the situation escalated. She alleged that Diddy and Kanye physically ripped her shirt off, leaving her almost fully exposed. The sense of helplessness was overwhelming. Heaton described the moment as unforgettable. She explained in her Instagram Live that she silently mouthed the word, "help," to another man in the room, but he turned away. That moment, she said, made it clear that no one was going to come to her rescue that night. "That's not what haunts me," she shared.
It's as these two grown men were pawing at me, trying to take my clothes off, I look over to this man asking for help, and I literally mouth the word help. And we lock eyes. And he looks away.
Realizing she was on her own, Heaton dug deep and used every ounce of determination to break free. She lunged forward, catching her attackers off guard long enough to make a run for the exit. Once outside the room, she hid in another studio, trembling and scared for about 25 minutes. Eventually, she managed to contact her manager and arrange for an Uber to get out of there. Her story sheds light on a scene where control and secrecy reigned, with Kanye and his crew allegedly abusing their power to exploit and silence people. Kanye's parties might appear glamorous on the surface, but they all seem to follow the same pattern. Phones were taken at the door, cutting guests off from the outside world, and a strict no evidence policy ensured whatever went on inside stayed hidden. This left attendees vulnerable, with no one to turn to for help. Then there was the infamous Vegas listening party for vultures, which took things to a whole new level. What started as just another high-energy Kanye event quickly descended into chaos, turning into one of his most controversial moments. It all began like any Kanye party, hyped to the max, with enough mystery to keep everyone guessing. He teased it on social media, promising a rave vibe in some random warehouse on the outskirts of Vegas. Tickets were a staggering $2,000 each, and fans bought them with no clue about refunds. By the time the crowd arrived, the excitement was buzzing. It was Kanye, after all, and you never knew what was coming next. But things quickly took a darker turn. At some point in the night, Kanye grabbed the mic and went into one of his trademark rants. At first, it was just him airing grievances about his former business partners, calling them out for betrayal and greed. But then the rant took an ugly turn. Kanye made anti-Semitic comments that left the crowd stunned. He claimed that Jewish people controlled most of the hospitals, schools, and businesses in LA, a baseless and offensive statement that led to immediate backlash from some attendees. But Kanye wasn't having it. When someone in the crowd challenged him, yelling that he wasn't God, Kanye snapped. He threatened to have the person kicked out and then continued his rant, comparing himself to Adolf Hitler and Jesus Christ like it was no big deal. Anyone who dared to speak up was met with shouts of "shut up," making the whole atmosphere even more uncomfortable. Finally, Adidas, his longtime partner, had enough and pulled the plug, along with several other brands who didn't want to be associated with the mess. The event turned into chaos. Las Vegas police showed up to shut it down because the party wasn't even licensed. The promoter was hit with a citation, and the crowd, who had dropped thousands on tickets, was kicked out into the night. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, more details about Kanye's secret party started to leak out. Former Yeezy chief of staff, Lauren Pishett, stepped forward with bombshell revelations about what went on behind the scenes. In her lawsuit, she described how Kanye used his Yeezy brand to manipulate and control people. Offices into a sexual playground with his wife Bianca Sari allegedly playing the role of an orgy coordinator. Piece's lawsuit alleges that Kanye frequently turned office spaces into makeshift bedrooms, setting up mattresses, blankets, and pillows in private rooms or even closets. These spaces, she claimed, were used for what Kanye referred to as his sex parties. The allegations go even deeper, suggesting that Bianca Sari was far more than just a bystander. She was allegedly involved in coordinating these events, playing a role in orchestrating Kanye's so-called fantasies. Pada's account becomes even more troubling as she describes Kanye's behavior at these gatherings. She claims Kanye frequently tried to expose her to these situations, creating moments where she felt trapped and manipulated. The lawsuit states that Kanye's actions seemed designed to make her feel powerless, while Bianca, who appeared unfazed by his actions, reportedly enabled much of it. One particularly disturbing claim involves an incident where Kanye allegedly grabbed Pacoda by the throat during a party with Bianca present. Pacoda described how Bianca stood nearby, showing no reaction, as if it were just another part of their dynamic. In the lawsuit, Pacoda suggests that Bianca wasn't just used to Kanye's behavior, but was actively involved in it, allegedly taking part in what Pacoda described as twisted and bizarre sexual behavior that mirrored Kanye's public and private persona. Kanye West's parties and video shoots have always been surrounded by controversy, and model Jennifer Ann's lawsuit brings another unsettling account to light. She claims that Kanye mistreated her during the 2010 shoot for his "Laro in for the Kill" video. According to Ann, things quickly spiraled out of control. Surrounded by his team and his then-girlfriend, Victoria's Secret model Celida Ebanks, Kanye allegedly set a tone of unchecked behavior. It started with Kanye dismissing Ann as the Asian girl, a comment that felt dehumanizing and racist to her. But it didn't stop there. During the filming, Kanye reportedly declared that it was art and compared himself to Picasso before allegedly choking her in front of his team. Claims that Kanye then forced his fingers into her mouth, making her gag repeatedly while simulating a forced oral act. All of this allegedly happened with cameras rolling and his team standing by, doing nothing to intervene. What made the situation even more chilling was the presence of Ebanks, who Ann says saw what was happening but turned away instead of stepping in. The lack of intervention from both Ebanks and Kanye's team left Ann feeling powerless and alone. The lawsuit doesn't just highlight the abuse, it paints a picture of an environment where manipulation and mistreatment were allowed to go unchecked. Target Kanye also calls out the Universal Music Group for failing to oversee or address the situation. While Kanye is known to stir controversy, Drake has kept things relatively quiet in his OVO fortress surrounded by his private security detail. Drake's OVO mansion parties. Drake's sprawling Toronto mansion, known as the Embassy. Drake's mansion, surrounded by high security, has become the center of numerous chilling local stories. Neighbors and locals have long whispered about the darker side of his extravagant parties, painting a picture that's far from the glamorous after-parties we see on Instagram. Instead, it sounds more like the chaos of a Bad Boy Records office party than just another night of champagne toasts and hit records. Living just a few blocks away from the Embassy gives people a front-row seat to the buzz surrounding the place. Drake's OVO team is always on the move, rolling in convoys, with high-profile security patrolling the area. The scale of the operation feels less like a celebrity keeping a low profile and more like a fortress designed to protect its secrets. Neighbors say it's not just about keeping fans at bay, but about controlling what goes on inside and ensuring those stories never reach the public. Rumors of wild parties have been swirling for years, and these aren't your average A-list gatherings with DJs and hors d'oeuvres. The word on the street is that some guests leave with more regrets than memories, and those who try to speak out reportedly face threats or extortion from Drake's team. Victims of alleged misconduct at these parties claim they've been pressured into silence, with Drake's influence looming large over any attempts to seek justice. The mansion itself has become an eerie landmark in Toronto. Locals say the presence of Drake's security team gives the area a strange vibe, with black SUVs cruising the streets near the embassy. It's also not unusual to see OVO merch being worn by fans, almost like a badge of honor, as they treat Drake like hip-hop royalty. Some admire the mansion as the ultimate flex, while others see it as a fortress hiding darker truths. One of the most unsettling accounts comes from Bennett Sipes, who filed a lawsuit against Drake after allegedly being mistreated at one of his parties. Sipes, a former contestant on Love Island, claims that his experience at a Drake-hosted event was far from idyllic. He accuses Drake, along with NFL star Odell Beckham Jr., and others of orchestrating a situation that left him both physically and emotionally scarred. Sipes says the incident began in March 2018 at a Hollywood nightclub, Lady Delilah, during what was supposed to be an exclusive after-party. According to Sipes, the night took a dark turn when he tried to access Drake and Beckham's VIP section but was denied entry. He claims the rejection quickly escalated into a confrontation with members of Drake's entourage. As he attempted to leave the venue after the altercation, Sipes says he was ambushed in an alley nearby. The lawsuit details a violent attack, with Sipes claiming he was beaten so severely by Eunice Benjima, a friend of Drake and Beckham, and others in their circle, that he suffered traumatic brain injuries, along with injuries to his back, neck, and shoulders. Sipes says that both Drake and Beckham stood nearby, watching the entire thing unfold without intervening. According to the complaint, Drake even made a throat-slash gesture before the altercation began, adding an ominous layer to the evening's events. Footage from the incident, captured on security cameras, has been at the center of the case. Already facing legal heat from other lawsuits involving minors, one anonymous plaintiff alleges she was mistreated by Jay-Z and Diddy at an after-party following the 2000 MTV Video Music Awards. She claimed she was just 13 years old at the time and was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement before the incident. Johnson's willingness. When a former NFL star speaks out, it carries weight. This isn't just some random person making wild claims. It's someone with a reputation on the line, sharing what they say they witnessed. It forces you to wonder how much of this is just gossip and how much is a truth that powerful people would do anything to bury. One such moment happened at the Kit Kat Club in Manhattan, where the industry's elite gathered for a listening party to celebrate Q-Tip's Amplified album. What should have been a night of music and mingling turned into chaos when Jay-Z, in the middle of a confrontation, stabbed producer Lance Rivera. The reason? Allegedly, Jay believed Rivera was behind the bootlegging of his album. Tensions quickly boiled over, and in the crowded atmosphere, the confrontation ended with Rivera bleeding from a serious wound. Witnesses described the moment as surreal. Jay-Z, at the height of his fame, was involved in a violent altercation that seemed more fitting for a street corner than the polished vibe of the Kit Kat Club. The event was packed with industry big names there to celebrate, but everything shifted when Jay confronted Rivera. According to Rivera, the attack came out of nowhere, leaving him blindsided and wounded in a shocking escalation. This was a moment that could have seriously impacted Jay-Z's career. In the aftermath, Jay-Z turned himself in, facing second-degree felony assault charges with a potential 15-year prison sentence. The stakes couldn't have been higher. But nearly 2 years later, in October 2001, Jay-Z stunned the public by pleading guilty to a reduced charge and receiving a sentence of just 3 years probation, far less than what many expected. This leniency sparked controversy, with critics suggesting that Jay-Z's wealth, connections, and top-tier legal team may have played a role in securing the favorable outcome. For Rivera, though, the aftermath of that night left little closure, just a stab wound and no real justice for what happened.